Welcome back to Better Than I Found It, the podcast all things college golf. Thank you for joining me. You're listening to Mike McGraw, the men's golf coach at Baylor. Today's guest is 2012 Big 12 medalist Joakim Mikkelsen, who was the first of 3 Norwegian golfers that Greg Priest brought to Waco. My current assistant, Mikkel Bjerch-Andresen, also a native of Norway, will join on the call to reminisce with his fellow countrymen. We talk about a lot of different subjects, including but not limited to their time at Baylor together, Joakim winning the Big 12 title at Whispering Pines, Viktor Hovland's influence on the game, and also Joakim's current position as a broadcaster for Norwegian golf on television. Joakim was a delight to speak with, and all Baylor golf fans should be proud of this former third-team All-American, one of the best to ever wear the green and gold. Sick 'em and enjoy. All right, everybody, let's give a big Better Than I Found It welcome to former Baylor golfer and 2012 Big 12 individual champion, Joakim Mikkelsen. Joakim, it's great to have you today. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's good to be. What's the weather like over there in Norway?
Oh, it's actually getting to be a bit better now. It's at least above freezing and we're seeing the sun again. So for Norway, that's a big plus. We have long and cold winters here, as you know.
Yeah, I do. Mikkel, my assistant that you know very well, he talks to me about those winters, but he actually tells me that because of a lack of wind, it's not unbearable, to be going through a winter. Like you went out today and did some cross-country skiing. Was a decent day of weather, right?
Yeah, it was. Not quite sure if I agree with Mikkel on that one. I hate everything about the winter. So me going skiing, it's more of a way of coping and getting through it all. But yeah, you get used to it. It's not too bad. But those 6 years of living in the US, that sure does something to your perception of the winter time. At least it did for me.
So you got a little bit spoiled to good weather compared to what you have to experience in Norway.
Very much so.
Yeah. Well, anyway, weather is something we can't change. I used to think the weather was really great in Stillwater, Oklahoma, and it's not as good as I actually thought it was. So I guess it is everybody's perception. So anyway, I am talking to a Norwegian. I coach with a Norwegian. I've coached 2 Norwegians, and I've admired another Norwegian we're going to talk about a little later as well, Viktor Hovland. But golf in Norway wasn't a big deal 10 years ago or 15 years ago when you were thinking about coming to college. So my first question for you is, how in the world did Greg Priest, my predecessor, get a kid from Drammen, Norway, to end up in Waco, Texas for 4 years? How did this happen?
No, it is quite crazy to think, coming from Drammen and ending up in Waco. But yeah, as you know, a lot of the coaches do travel around, and one big event that many of the coaches go to is the European Team Championship, the junior championship over here. And that's sort of where I first met Coach Priest. And he followed me quite a bit for those couple of days. This tiny, angry Norwegian must have been something that he liked. But yeah, that was pretty much where we met. And then sort of the communication just went on from there.
When did that you're halfway around the world? So did you actually come and take a visit to Waco?
Yes, I did. I came on an official visit that next year. And I wasn't recruited by anyone else. Wasn't really in contact with anyone else, and quickly became decision whether I was going to go or not. It was going to be Baylor or not go to college. So but yeah, after the visit, as you know, we don't have near the facilities over here or the climate or anything. So yeah, I took some time to sign and basically make the formal decision, but it was essentially a no-brainer for me after that trip over to Waco.
That's great. Well, you talked about the European Team Championships. In 2006, you were part of something very historical, and I know we're going to talk about Viktor Hovland later, creating more history than Norway's ever seen, but you and your teammates won the 2006 European Team Championships. First time it ever happened And I want you to talk about that. And Mikkel, are you in there? I want to bring Mikkel in here because he knows a lot of those teammates you had on that team. So talk about 2006, both of you.
Yeah, well, actually, I'll have to correct myself a little bit because probably wasn't, until the next year in 2007 where I really got in contact with Coach Priest. But I guess he knew that we won the year before in Sweden, and it's quite crazy to think back to that time because that team was so strong. I mean, I was the number 5 or 6 man on that team for sure, and we had Marius Thorpe, Anders Christiansen, some of those guys, just insane talent, and probably comes down to the mental side, because if you look at some of those guys skill wise, there was nothing stopping them from becoming world-class players, but it just so happened that some of us played professionally for a few years, but couldn't really make more out of it than that. But yeah, special time for sure. And if you look at it now, you had sort of that generation that I was in competing in top European golf, and then nothing really happened until the group of obviously Victor Hovland, Christopher Reitan, Christopher Ventura, who played at Oklahoma State, and Christian Krog, who's now on the Challenge European Tour. So it was a very special generation that I came up in, and I was fortunate, I think, to be the worst player pretty much in that group, because every time we traveled, every time we played practice, I was just having to try so hard just to keep up. And I think in the long run, that was very beneficial for me and my development.
That's great. Mikkel, do you have a memory of that team winning in 2006?
I have several memories from that group. 2006 was pretty much when kind of I started playing golf seriously. So that was a little bit ahead of my time, but what I wanted to share of my thoughts from that time was these boys were 3 to 5 years older than me, and they got to such a seriously high level in the world of golf that Norway hadn't seen before. I think Joakim saying he was kind of at the back end of that team. That's because you had Anders Christiansen was number 4 in the world, I believe. Marius Thorpe won the silver medal at the British Open, I believe, won the European Am. So those guys being 3 to 4 years older than me really pushed me and my generation along as well. So that was really cool.
Yeah, and it's quite interesting. You mentioned the Open Championship. We played. Remember, I played foursomes with Marius that week when we won in Sweden, and then as we finished up there, he went to Liverpool, and he ended up being the low am of the Open Championship there, and just went to prove that the level of play was so high. And I think that was a good example of sort of what a strong team can do, with people working together and working hard, pushing each other, because we hadn't really had that before. We had 1 or 2 standout players, but the gap normally had been so big between the top guy and the next guy that nothing really came of it. But that was a fun time for sure. Too bad that I guess nothing really came of it in the professional ranks, but the talent and the potential was there for sure.
But nothing came of it in the professional world, I guess, but a lot came from that as well. And the hard work that group had was really special. So it really pushed us younger kids along. I remember you guys went to a school in kind of close to where I was from, and Anders Christiansen was 3 years older than me, and I saw how hard he worked. It was unbelievable. So I think that really set the tone for Norwegian golf for years to come.
Well, those are good memories for you guys to have. I know sharing those are good. One who actually experienced it, and the other who saw it from afar and was inspired by it, like Mikkel was. But when we talk about Greg Priest getting you to, okay, so you corrected yourself and said he actually saw me the next year, and then it was the next year you came over. But if you think about it, before you won that championship in 2006, no one in Norway knew anything about Baylor, and no one in Waco, Texas was thinking Norwegian golf. So the two hadn't come together yet. And so it took Greg going back over there that next summer to see you play, and then talking you into come, and you actually making the decision, well, if Baylor's the only team that's going to recruit me, I'm going. And but how it influenced Mikkel's generation of junior golfers is kind of amazing, because you came over and you were very successful at Baylor. And so let's take that little recruiting situation a little further, if you will, because it shows you how something that started from zero, ground zero, nothing, no connection between Waco and Norway golf or Norwegian golf or the other way around. And then all of a sudden, two more really good players from Norway showed up in Waco, Texas. Talk about that.
You know what? Looking back at it now that I'm a little bit older, I have to give Coach Priest, credit for that whole process, because he wasn't that old, that experienced at the time either. But when you're 18, if you see a grown-up and adult, you just think they have it all figured out. But that was a learning experience for him as well, I think. I guess the communication with me and throughout that process. Now, he did have Lorenzo come in the year before. So he had some experience, with the whole foreign recruitment thing and all that. But I think us winning in 2006 that year, all of a sudden the next year, all the coaches were following us. They were following us in Sweden pretty much, and I don't know. They spoke a lot with our national team coach at the time, Niklas Dietel, is his name. And I think what Coach Priest saw and what a lot of coaches around that time figured out was that, I guess in the Nordic countries, there is a certain, discipline and I guess working mentality, but especially in those national teams. And at least speaking to Coach Priest, he would have to tell you, the reason why he, wanted me to come. But I think it was, something about that and what we've spoke about a lot, just hating losing so much, I think is something we spoke about a lot. But yeah, other than that, obviously everything was very new to me in that process, all these forms, all this stuff you have to go through. It was a bit overwhelming, I remember. But yeah, it was very fun to see when I came over eventually, earning the trust of Coach Priest eventually, and playing for him. And obviously we spoke a lot, and I knew of Mikkel, so obviously I had some part in him coming around that time. And of course Andreas, from the same town as me that I grew up playing with. Our dads have known each other forever and all of that. And I think sort of that was a lot of trust for Coach Priest to put in me in a way, because obviously he saw them play himself, but there were a lot of questions there, the first one being, can he play? Can he really play? What am I going to get in terms of, work mentality, attitude, and all of that. And for a couple of years there, Waco, Texas almost became a Norwegian golf colony, which was quite funny.
Well, when you think about recruiting, especially internationally, if you're recruiting in Texas, you get to know parents, you get to see people at tournaments, a bunch about the players and their families. Mm-hmm. But Coach Priest wouldn't have known much about you. So once he got you over here and realized, okay, that's solid, that's good, that's a good start, then he could trust sort of your evaluation to want to bring in a good teammate, for one, like Mikkel or like Andreas. It's like, that's how those pipelines sort of get started. At Oklahoma State, we had some Swedish kids, and every one of them was an All-American and everyone was an academic All-American. That's kind of hard to do right there, but you end up getting good recommendations. So I assume you wouldn't have brought anybody across that you didn't think Coach Priest would approve of or would be happy with.
No, for sure. And I think what's interesting, with if you get Norwegian golfers, trying to get them to come to school, you can pretty much always count on that they are going to be, somewhat disciplined. They're going to get good grades. They're definitely going to take care of the practice side of things. You're not going to have someone that's, not wanting to show up to practice. But what you do get on the other hand is, when I came along, Coach Priest didn't have any experience with someone from Norway. And the more, I guess the older I get and look back at it, the more I appreciate sort of all of the work that Coach Priest and his wife Nita did with me sort of outside the golf course and just sort of helping me with life, because that stuff you don't have to really think about when you get someone that's, moved 2 hours up I-35. They're going to know how stuff works. I sure didn't, and Lorenzo didn't either when he came. So a lot of time was spent, by Nita and Coach Priest on that. So sort of the time they didn't have to spend, maybe teaching, practice discipline and all of that, they sure made up for on the life side of things. So looking back at it and the work that you guys do, and it's easier now to admire that work more, because you have some stubborn 18-year-old kid come in from across the world, with his way of living, and coming from a certain culture that could not have been easy.
Well, don't you think, though, that as time goes by, anyway, you see things more clearly anyway? I mean, just, you're what, 30? Well, how old are you?
30, tough, 32. Yeah.
Yeah, 32.
Yeah.
You see the world a little differently than you did at 22 or even 18 for sure. So it's good that somebody like you can look back on that with sort of a clearer view of like what was being done for you. Because the truth is, and I was speaking to our guys about this yesterday, it's very hard when you're egocentric. The world's about me. I'm the golfer here. I'm the athlete. It's pretty easy to forget that there's a lot of people pouring into your life.
Mm-hmm.
And you may not notice this until years later. So I'm glad you said that. That's really good. So let's talk about your senior year, for one, because you won a very, very big event at Whispering Pines. And that's where we're going to play the conference championship again in a month. Really excited about going back there. But you had the other guy on this Zoom call, Mikkel, was your teammate. And we, Oklahoma State, played every round with you, all the rounds with you that week. So I got to see you up front, close and personal, win that championship. Let's talk about that. You and Mikkel talk about that week at Whispering Pines.
I don't have much to say other than I think I shot in the mid 70s a lot, maybe around par once or twice. And the other guy on the Zoom call really took off, but it's one of my clearest memories from that freshman year. It was really cool to see that happen for Joakim.
That was really cool. And not that I needed a chip on my shoulder, because I had plenty of that to begin with. I just remember so clearly that just a week before, I felt that I got snubbed out of a spot on the Palmer Cup team. Looking at all the rankings, I think I was the third or fourth highest ranked European at the time, if you looked at college rankings or the world amateur rankings. And I just remember I was so mad because it was going to be played at Royal County Down. That was my big goal for the year. And I played really well that year, leading up to the Big 12 as well. And I just remember thinking that, well, not going to change anything, but you sort of try to find these little things to motivate yourself. And I just remember at the beginning of that week, just go win it, because that will just make them look really bad. So that was my motivation. That doesn't make me sound like a great person at all, but I played really well that week. Obviously, Whispering Pines, what a golf course. I mean, probably my favorite golf course in the world. Obviously, I'm biased, but yeah, playing in those really tough conditions for 4 rounds, and it's probably something that I'll never forget, memory for life. Also because of all of that 2012, I played really well. If I've been able to keep playing like that for the years to come after that, I probably wouldn't have quit so soon. But that was peak for me, the golf I played that week. And I remember very clearly Coach McGraw, the final round, was playing with Tanner Kesterson. Really nice kid. And I remember you walking with him quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
For the majority of the round, I was just playing by myself, because that was sort of Coach Priest and I normally, unless I wanted to, I just said, just leave me alone. I can figure it out. You can walk with, a freshman or whatever. He came in sort of at the end of the round. I think he wanted to make sure that I didn't do anything stupid when I was leading the tournament. But yeah, I think the first 2 rounds I played with Taylor Gooch. Because as you said, we played together all those rounds. And just one of those. I'm really jealous in a way that you're going back there now in the month, because that place is so special, and I'll sure be keeping up from home. But it was I remember also what I thought was cool that week. Obviously hopping in the van, driving back from Trinity, Texas to Waco. I could tell back then that was motivation for Mikkel and Kyle, being the younger guys on the team. Sort of I think for Kyle as well. I mean, similar height as me in a way. Not been giving much in terms of nature and physical ability necessarily. I remember him saying that to me, sort of. Well, I think if you can do it, it just goes to show that I probably can too. And I mean, quite cool to see Kyle making it onto the PGA Tour and having the career that he had, because obviously he turned out to be quite the player.
Well, I was going to talk to you about that and ask you about that, because I'm going to ask that question in a moment. But one of the things that I said about Kyle at the end of his senior year, which was my first year at Baylor, I was mesmerized because this little guy didn't hit it very far, hit it dead straight. By the way, he hit 46 consecutive fairways at Southern Hills. There will never, ever, ever be another championship at Southern Hills, 46 straight fairways. You're not going to do it. But that was amazing. And I told him, I said, Kyle, some people have been given a lot. You've done a lot with what you've been given. And he kind of liked that, because it was like, you're right, coach. I get a lot out of what God gave me. So if I can go back to your senior year when Kyle was a freshman, along with Mikkel, you were only 5'6". I need to know how a guy 5'6" figures out a way to be a champion golfer as you were. And you were third team All-American that year. It's not like you just had one good tournament. You played well all year. How do you do that? That's not easy in a game where length and strength and all of that is getting more and more important. How did you do it?
First of all, I think the 5'6", I think that's probably generous from someone in the athletic department that did that. Not sure if that actually, if that is actually true. But yeah, it's a bit tough to answer, because in my situation, I never had the opposite. I mean, I never knew what it was like to be as tall as Mikkel or, hit it as far as someone else. I just sort of made do with what I had and worked really hard. I knew that, if I'm going to get to any sort of speed and get any distance, I need to work out a lot, which I did for many years. And I think for me, it was more, I used it as motivation I almost think that it was one of my strengths, not having the physical ability, because I just knew I had to work so much harder. And for so many years, especially when you're a junior golfer and you're not hitting it far, you see guys growing, hitting it a lot farther. It's easy to panic because you look at that and you think, well, I'm going to be left behind. But to me, it was just like, well, I just have to work so much harder. Maybe I won't see it now. Maybe it won't happen for me now. But these people are going to quit playing. They're going to start doing other stuff. They're going to, lose focus, do all of that. And getting that gratification a bit later, I think it tastes so much sweeter as well. And to me, that was, I didn't really, start playing what I would call good enough golf until I got to Waco, got to college, because then I was finally getting something that could look like a grown person's body. so then you could, start moving the ball out there and do all that stuff. But yeah, I don't know. Never really saw that as as a limitation. As dumb as it may sound, if you look at me, you wonder. I remember Nita used to take pictures of Mikkel and I walking next to each other on the golf course, making fun of who was the senior and who was the freshman. Yeah, if you never know any different, coach, then what are you gonna do? I inherited that height from my mom, and not much I could do about it.
I think this right here gets to kind of the core of who Joakim is as a golfer. And it's funny, going back to what you said about bringing in another Norwegian that's probably going to work hard and all this stuff. I think we were similar in that way, but I think we couldn't have been more different in a lot of the other ways. So, but yeah, just quickly on the Big 12, I remember that so clearly because we were rooting so hard for you, because we knew how much you wanted this, and you wanted this more than any other person on this team. And that's why that was so special to all of us too. And I think you're right. Like Kyle and I, that really sunk in for both of us and really set the pace for the rest of our time here in Waco.
think that's the really cool thing about college golf, because if your teammates over however many years, you get to play with each other, against each other so much, at some point in time everyone on the team is going to beat one another, playing Ridgewood or whatever it is. And if you use that correctly as your motivation, then it just goes to show that it's not it's not really that hard to do it at the collegiate level, I think. But yeah, that's having that group mentality that we had back then, just really pulling for each other every week. We're playing against each other, but to Mikkel's mentality there, that you're having everyone on the team pull for you so hard. That's something. If I had a chance to go back and relive that, I will hop on a plane right this second, I think.
My memory from that week is I walked in your group. I walked with Kyle Jones as well, and I walked with Mikkel. So I walked with 3 different guys on the Baylor team. And I remember meeting Mikkel, and I thought it was Henrik Stenson standing on the other side of the tee, this massive, gigantic guy.
That's until I hit it in the rough, Coach.
Yeah, but you did birdie the first hole. You hit a 9-iron to 2 feet. I do recall that.
This is true.
That is true. But you know what? And when I saw you, I didn't know you, Joakim. I'd seen you at tournaments. I didn't know you. But I thought to myself, this guy is tough. This guy is really, really tough. And I just think toughness is one of the greatest qualities an athlete can have, because you're always going to have adversity. So somebody who's tough he's already ahead of the game. But 2 things strike me. One, the positive way you use the chip on the shoulder. So the chip on the shoulder is actually a valuable tool if you use it in the right way. And you did. And the other thing was, you didn't see your height, your lack of weight, or whatever it was. You didn't see it at all as a disadvantage. I talked to Scott Verplank one time, and he was the shortest world-class golfer at the time. I think Corey Pavin was before, but shortest in length off the tee. And Scott just said, that it's never been a problem. I eliminate one side of the golf course, so I hit a cut all the time. I chip and putt them to death, and I just don't miss fairways. And that's the only thing I can do. And he didn't see it as a limitation. And Scott was diabetic as well. He didn't even see that as a limitation. He said it made me more disciplined. So I love your outlook of like, I never even considered that. So what? I'm not as tall as these guys. I didn't know anything else. I just figured it out. But the positive way you use that chip on the shoulder, that's impressive to me as a coach.
Well, thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Well, the big elephant in the room that I want to talk about right now is Viktor Hovland. And I hope you're okay with that. You want to talk about Viktor there?
That is quite okay with me.
Your current position as a commentator for Norwegian television for golf, and you work for TrackMan. Is that correct, in Norway?
Yes, that's right.
Okay, so you're no longer playing professionally, but you do commentate these tournaments. So tell me, let's just talk about it with Mikkel joining in, please. The impact that Viktor has had on Norwegian golf would have to be similar to what Arnold Palmer did to American golf and world golf 60 years ago. I mean, as far as just an explosion. Talk to me about that. Talk to me about your current position and just Norwegian golf in general right now, with Viktor being the head.
Well, obviously it's incredible what Viktor is doing and how insanely good he's gotten in such a short amount of time in the pro ranks. But yeah, it's hard to describe sort of this boom explosion that we're seeing in golf in Norway now. And it's mainly because of Viktor. Golf is cool now. We're seeing younger people play. For the longest time, it was mostly grown adults playing. There's so many young people coming into the game now because they're watching him on TV every week, not just playing well, but just being the person that he is. I think that's something you can't. You need to appreciate that as well, because you could have had someone ranked number 3 in the world and not be as nice of a guy as Viktor is. It wouldn't have had the same effect. But it's just his whole way of going about his business, the way he plays his golf. People here just loving it, and we've waited. We had Susanne Pedersen on the women's side. We waited for so long to finally have someone take that next step, because as we've covered already, we've had a lot of good amateurs come out of Norway, but no one really cracked the code to make it on tour until Victor came along. And to see what he's doing now, it just makes my job as a commentator and all that so much more fun, because people are so excited to see him tee it up. And for me as well, getting to watch him, having seen him, since he came up on the junior national team when he was, 14 or whatever, to see him now as this global superstar, I would almost call him, it's a bit surreal, I think.
Mikkel, your perspective, you're watching it occur over here in America, and you saw him play college golf. What is your perspective?
Yeah, he's just a phenomenal guy, and could not have been a better representative for golf in Norway, and also college golf and everything. And my perspective of the Norwegian coverage is more like, I live in the US, so every so often I'll look at the newspapers online or whatever, and you actually see golf being covered now. And that's a huge change. I mean, even that, it sounds silly, but you go in the biggest Norwegian newspapers, boom, there's Victor's face every week. And so that's really cool. You see, I was home this past summer, and you do see a change just at the local clubs and whatever else. So it's just awesome to see. And I don't think it could be a better representative. I think maybe you, Joakim, can maybe talk to as well, just with your commentating. It seems like every week, Victor's, every shot is being covered, whether it's on your channel or the other channel. It just seems like there's such a big interest to follow Victor as well, just every shot that he hits.
It's insane. And he's gotten someone created a Victor Hovland fan club on Facebook, and it has, I'm not sure how many members now, tens of thousands. And you have people every week, posting everything about the golf course, everything about, they read these power rankings, all the people are going crazy about it. And that's one thing, seeing all that engagement in social media and the viewership and all of that. But just to describe how real this boom in golf is right now, for the first time in forever, there are waiting lists to get into golf clubs in Norway now. That was 3 years ago unheard of. Now COVID and everything has boosted that, but I think just as much of it you have to credit to Victor, because getting to join a club now, 3-4 years back, the golf clubs were sort of begging for people to join to try golf, and now I guess that's the sort of the negative side of it, if you will. They have to turn people down because there's no more room. And and I'm struggling to get a tee time now, which was never a topic a few years back.
What's also funny is the common Norwegian man usually likes to go on Facebook and comment on cross-country skiing that, get after the waxers of the Norwegian ski team. They put the wrong stuff under the skis and all this stuff. Now they talk about Victor's drops or his bogeys or whatever. So
you have so many new people coming into the sport, young people, whatnot. I think the cool part about it that I see as a privilege is and a responsibility is sort of explaining to these people what it's about, because people are tuning in and watching Victor and they've never really played themselves. They don't know the rules. They don't know what's going on. Sometimes you have to help them count strokes pretty much if he's in trouble, or it's basically golf in Norway now is a whole new world after him breaking through.
Well, and I'm glad you actually said that. I'm glad you interrupted me, because you said something I was going to say about Arnold Palmer. And the reason my analogy of Arnold Palmer's impact on the game in 1960 and Victor's impact on Norwegian golf today, the reason they're the same is you just described it. Not one steel worker or factory worker in the United States of America had ever watched golf on television, had ever looked for it in the newspaper. When Arnold Palmer came along, they could relate to him. Mm-hmm. And now all of a sudden the masses were watching golf that never did before. And Arnold Palmer opened that up for Jack Nicklaus and for Tiger Woods after him. Well, I would say this. The other thing about Victor that makes him so incredibly special from a coach's standpoint is his unbelievable gratitude. And he does it with a smile, but he does it with what he says and how he says it. You can tell that man understands a lot has been done for me, and there's a lot of really good things happening to me, and I'm thankful for it. Would you agree with that, or at least sort of agree with that?
Absolutely. He's, as Mikkel said, the greatest ambassador that we could have, and it's really easy to get also caught up in how magnificent of a ball striker he is, because that part of his game is just the unbelievable. But I don't think people speak about and appreciate enough his mental toughness. Just to go back to that, because as someone that used to get mad on the golf course a lot, spend a lot of time, I guess thinking about wasting energy on what has already happened. If you look at him play, and he hits bad shots also, not that often, but he'll hit a poor chip or he'll miss a putt, and you see him sort of just shaking his head a little bit, and he just carries on. He just goes about his business. And to me, as someone who has struggled with that part specifically, that to me is just so impressive, because that mental discipline that you have is that's just so impressive to me. And also, with this high profile of a player he's become now, he can't fake that good guy image that he's built either, because quite quickly you are going to be revealed, you are going to be exposed. And I just think it's so cool that the whole world of golf just gets to see him for what he is. And I just hope we get to have many, many years of it going forward.
Well, thank you for saying that. He is showing you that you can be a good person and be an incredible world-class golfer who competes hard. Mm-hmm. You can do both. You don't have to be a jerk, and he's not. He's just an amazing guy. And I remember a conversation I had with him when he was a sophomore in college. We were at Valspar down in Florida, and he came down. I was having coffee and writing in my journal, and we talked for an hour. And I gave him an insight into my memory, how my memory is so good. And I think to this day, still a little bit shocked by it. But just the humility it took for him, being one of the best players in the country, to sit down and talk to a coach about that. We just had a great conversation. It's very real. He came on this podcast a little over a year ago and was just as genuine as you could possibly be. And Mikkel told a good story when Mikkel was an older guy on the Norwegian team, and this little snot-nosed kid was beating them all. So what a guy.
And I think also when we're speaking of Victor, I remember this so clearly, because that was my last year sort of playing before I quit. We were at this practice camp in Spain. We were actually playing Valderrama. We had this internal tournament, so I guess the seriousness of it would be similar to qualifying for to make the team in college. And I ended up playing all the rounds with him then, and he must have been turning 15 that year. I believe he won the Norwegian championship shooting 26 under that summer. And I just remember at the time, because I was playing on the Challenge Tour mainly at the time, and I'd gone through college. Now, a lot of these younger kids that were there, they were a couple years away from even going to college. But what struck me then, and what I remember so clearly to this day, that a lot of those other young kids, no offense, they just seemed to have it all figured out. They had nothing to learn from us who had been to college for however many years. We played professionally here and there. They just knew everything. And I just remember playing with Victor. He was so curious and so genuine, and asking me for those 3 rounds that we played, about college, about the, this and that. And I remember him just asking me one thing, is that if you had one thing, just one thing that you learned in college or whatever that you could share with me, what would it be? And I remember also what I told him was like, he was so much more talented at 15 than I was, as a grown up then. So it was sort of strange just to be in that situation. But I just remember saying, hey, you have all the tools. There's nothing stopping you. But just be wary, just be a bit critical of who you listen to on the way, because the better you get, the more people are going to want a piece of you. And not everyone is going to be, around you for the right reasons. I remember that conversation that we had quite clearly. And looking back now, knowing that I don't think he turned 15 yet, or maybe he was 15 at the time. That to me was just so Yeah, I wasn't asking those questions, thinking about those things when I was his age. So yeah, it's very. I couldn't be happier for him and the success that he's having.
I think everybody over here, I mean, I know the people in Stillwater, Oklahoma love him. I know basically the United States of America loves him. I mean, he's easy to pull for. And I hope for the game of golf, I hope he wins majors. I think when he wins majors, it's gonna be meteoric. I mean, it'll go through out into the stratosphere, his popularity and what it might do for the game. So I'm pulling for him to win a major, actually. That would be great. Mikkel, I think we're going to do a speed round in a minute, but I've got one more question to ask him. Are you ready for the speed round, Mikkel?
Yeah, I would like to say one thing on the Victor thing. I think just want to say thank you to Joakim too for what you're doing for Norwegian golf, because I know you are maybe the most popular golf commentator, and that doesn't surprise me at all. You're great with words, with language, with everything. You do your homework before these big tournaments. I've gotten several texts, asking me about, hey, this player is in this US Open field. Have you seen him? Have you seen this other guy? What can you tell me? So just really appreciate what you do there, and you've gained a lot of popularity too with this golf boom, and I think deservingly so.
Thanks a lot, Mikkel. I appreciate that. What you do learn when you work in the TV world that you get a lot of people that like you, and you probably get an equal amount of people that don't like you. But that's part of it. And did you know, Coach McGraw, that Mikkel joined me in the booth last summer during the Open?
I did. He sent me sort of a little video on the phone. Yes, you're better than he is.
Did very well himself. That was fun. So maybe this summer, if he's home, maybe I'll have to call him in again.
Yeah, anytime. It's so easy sitting in there with Joakim. He'll do the talking, just team me up all the time. So it was awesome. But no, I do think you say half like you, half dislike you. That's not true. You're doing an awesome job, and it's really cool to see.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I have a question. I've heard 2 or 3 video clips or seen video clips when Victor's done something amazing. And I don't know what they were saying because it was in Norwegian, but some of the commentators, your colleagues, go absolutely crazy when he does something good. Have you ever done that like crazy?
No, not like that. No, obviously I get excited and all that. I think I'm a bit more calm than those guys. I'm not sure if it's not me being nervous or whatever it is, because I do pull so hard for Victor, but that's just not in my my nature to be yelling and screaming that way. And I just don't want to sit there and fake that either. If I don't get that excited, I get really excited, but I don't communicate that by screaming into the microphone. But it's I watch those tournaments that I do where I'm not in the booth. I sit at home listening to those guys, and I think they do a very good job of promoting the sport also.
Well, I'm going to give you an invitation to come back on this podcast someday when Victor does win a major championship, because I want to hear, Mikkel will as well, kind of what you were going through as the week progressed when he won. He's going to. So let's make that a date. Yeah. Okay, before we do the speed round, we've got one more question for you, and that is this. If you were going to be giving one piece of advice, or maybe 2, but just a little bit of advice to a 14-year-old European junior golfer. So he's going through the same sort of system that you went through, and he's about to go through that system. What would the best advice be for that kid who wants to be a college golfer, so come over to the United States, play college golf, and then play professionally? What do you think is the most important thing to tell him at that age?
Just work as hard as you can is probably going to be the one thing, is that never be happy about where you are, because there's always going to be someone outworking you, or someone that's better than you. But also on the other side of that, never panic and don't look so much to those guys. Just do your own thing. Some people, and that's the funny part about junior golf, some people are really good when they're 15, but maybe that's their ceiling. You never know. They develop early. They have the physical ability. You might not, but if you work hard enough, it will come. So that would be my one thing. Just worry about yourself. Let everyone else do their thing, and it will work itself out. That would be my advice.
Very good advice. Appreciate that very much. So a speed round. This is going to be an unusual speed round in the fact that I'm going to give a question, you'll answer it. Mikkel will give a question, and we'll go back and forth until we've worn you down. Okay.
Okay. This will be interesting.
We haven't prepared you for this. All right. Number one, my first question: Shawshank Redemption or Remember the Titans?
Remember the Titans.
Okay.
Okay, number two. I remember vividly Joakim working hard with a broomstick putter back in the day. Is that thing still alive? And if so, where is it?
It's in and out of my bag. It's still alive. Funnily enough, I haven't snapped it yet, but it's still alive. I have it at the house.
That thing is ugly too, isn't it? Orange or something?
Oh, it's terrible, awful. Let's not get into it.
All right. This is the most important question I'm going to ask you, so don't get this wrong, okay? George Strait or Luke Bryan?
It's going to be George Strait.
Attaboy. God, you are my favorite Norwegian. You hear that, Mikkel? He's my favorite.
Believe it or not, we did get to listen to some country music. Isn't he the one with that about the X's in Texas song?
That's him.
I can relate to that somewhat. So yeah, it's gonna be him.
Very good. Okay, this might not be as speedy of a question. You had a hole-in-one one time at hole 12 at Laredo Country Club during the Border Olympics. Yep. Which club did you hit?
That was a 5-iron.
Okay. Any more details to that 5-iron?
I'm sad we didn't get into that story. Can we do that quickly?
Yeah, do that story.
That's what I'm teeing you up for.
Do this story.
Yeah. Have you heard it before, Coach McGraw?
I have not heard this story. I can't wait.
Well, this was funny. I won the Border Olympics that year, and the hole-in-one didn't hurt. But that was on 12, and I was playing in the one spot, so I was coming through there last. And our interim assistant at the time, Ben Wright, he was standing there on the tee box. And we were arguing back and forth, and he just went, I just needed to hit 4. Everyone's hit 4. I think it was Lorenzo hit 5. He came up short. And I just stood there, and I was just always hitting my low little hook. And I just thought, I can't hit 4-iron here. It's just going to go too far. And we were thinking, and there was a bit of a wait. So actually, I was like, well, all right. And then Ben sort of went away. He just stood there on the side of the tee box. And if I remember correctly, that tee box is right next to 18T. There's a lot of people around us, big weights and all of that. And it's my time, my turn to hit, and I make it. And Ben sort of comes around, and he's sort of, well, wasn't too bad a club, was it? Like, no, coach, it wasn't. I hit 5. And I was sort of, that was a good mic drop. And I sort of just walked off. But yeah, that was a fun one.
Okay, I gotta get in.
You remember, Mikkel? I'm impressed you remember.
I just remember the story because I wasn't in school yet. But I got to get another speed round in then, real quick. What felt better in that moment, actually making the hole-in-one or the "I told you so"?
I told you so.
Okay,
that's that little chip on your shoulder right there.
Yeah.
All right, most famous person you've ever met. You can't include Victor Hovland now that we've talked about him.
That would be President George W. Bush at Ridgewood.
I saw that photo this week when Greg Priest was on my podcast. Nita posted that photo on Facebook.
But actually, I wasn't there that time. I met him. I was by myself putting at Ridgewood one time.
Okay.
And he just walked by, and he just said hello and whatnot. Basically just greeted me and walked on. But that counts as met, I guess.
That's good.
Yeah.
Next speed round. Sometimes you're known for not having just the cleanest mouth. You can have a little foul mouth at times. Have you ever dropped any bad stuff on air while commentating?
I have not. Knock on wood. I actually have not, which is
that's incredible discipline.
Yeah.
Incredible discipline.
All right. Next question. Favorite pro athlete?
Has to be Tiger Woods.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Mikkel?
Last question from me. Most memorable moment that you've called on air so far?
I think actually that will have to be Victor winning the US Am. I've called him winning some pro tournaments, but when he won at Pebble, that's probably the most memorable, because I just thought that, what's to come here, and now we know a bit. So it will have to be that for me.
Excellent. Final question of the speed round. Your dream foursome, you and three others. They could be dead or alive. Who are those three players?
I have to be in it. I can't just ride in the cart and watch.
Yeah, why don't you ride in the cart and watch and serve them Diet Cokes and then have four players? Go ahead.
Okay, because if I can throw myself out, that would have to be, I'd throw Tiger Woods and Rory McIlroy in there.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would throw my old Baylor roommates, Jerry Ruiz and Lorenzo Scotto, in, just to make him look bad. That would be my dream foursome.
Excellent fortune. Hey, listen, Joakim, it's been a pleasure to have you on today. For one, I want Baylor people to know we've got Baylor golfers out in the world doing things and still very well connected. As Mikkel said, you do a great job. We're really proud of that. And just thank you for joining us today.
Appreciate you having me on. Thanks a lot.